the next hypothesis, which is the input hypothesis. Hypothesis number 4 in Krashen's monitor model, input hypothesis. According to Krashen, language learning takes place through something which is known as comprehensible input. But before understanding the concept of comprehensible input, I think first you should know what is input. Do you know what is input?
Insert something, give something.
In terms of language, yes. What would be input in terms of language?
How data we are required for, what type of data we are required for.
Data, I mean the language which we are exposed to. The language to which we are exposed, that is input. Just like now I am speaking, so this is input for you.
Yes.
And input is also the language which you have got in your books. So that is also input. Mean the language in verbal form, in spoken form or in written form, all sorts of language that we are exposed to, that is input. But sometimes you would have noticed that sometimes we are unable to understand the language. Means we say it is very difficult. Sometimes, now it might not be that much difficult for you, but just think about when you were quite young and when you were able to just understand very simple sentences, just like this is a chair, this is a book, my name is so and so Shehzad and my name is Safiya or whatsoever, my name is Khalil, or this is my room, so on. So you were able to understand these simple sentences, but if it were slightly difficult structures, just like suppose the structure of a conditional sentence, just like if we say, if I had known about this before, I would have avoided this. So a conditional sentence, if I had known about this before, I would have avoided this. Suppose that this sentence is spoken in front of a 3 or 4 years old student, learner of the language. Do you think that that learner would be able to learn this structure? There would be some difficulty. Yes. So according to Krashen, the language learning process is based upon comprehensible input. So as we understood what is input, input is the language which we are exposed to. But it is not just input according to Krashen, it is the comprehensible input that is important in language learning. Word comprehensible is from the word comprehension, and comprehension mean understanding. So mean comprehensible input, the language which we can understand, but it does not mean simple, very simple language. So what Krashen's concept is in comprehensible input, Krashen uses specific sort of, you can say, formula, which is I plus 1. I stands for input, plus 1 means the next level of difficulty. So comprehensible input is that input which is slightly beyond our current level of understanding, not very far away from our current level of understanding. In simple language, if I give you a very layman example, if suppose you are climbing up stairs or climbing up on a ladder, so your current level on stairs or ladder is I, and if I say that move 2 steps ahead or 3 steps ahead, will it be easier for you or difficult? It will be quite difficult. But if you follow the natural, you take the next step and then next and then next, will you be able to climb up? Yes. So that is I plus 1. So currently your level is this, and then the next step on a ladder you take. So you take the next step, so you move slightly up, then you take the next step. So at every level it is your I plus 1. But if it is asked that move from the base of the stairs to the 5th level or to the 6th level or to the 3rd level, you will have to stretch your language a lot, and that will be really difficult and you might fall. So same is the case with language, that in language, if a learner is exposed to slightly difficult language that is from his or her current level of understanding, then through that process language learning will take place. On the other hand, if a learner is not exposed to slightly difficult and he is exposed to the same simple language, just like if in case of second language learners, you are taught or you just come across the sentences, this is my table, this is my chair, this is my room, I am hungry or I am late, these and you never use or never try to move to the next level, that is slightly difficult, just like you do not make any sort of past tense or you do not make use of third person s, so you won't be able to learn the language. So I mean, if a learner remains only at I, even then no learning will take place. So that learner will stop at that stage, which is known as fossilization. I mean, when we stop learning a language, that state, this is a term in applied linguistics, which means that for every language learner, second language learner, a stage might come when that learner stops learning the language. So for in technical terms of linguistics, it is said that the learner has fossilized. Fossilized means the learner has become stagnant. Now the learner is not learning anything in terms of language. So if the learner is just at the stage of I, will learning take place, further learning?
No.
No. And if the learner is exposed from I to I plus 4, I plus 5, will learning take place?
No.
No. Again, it will be really difficult. So according to Krashen, it is I plus 1 formula that helps in the language learning process. Okay? So I plus 1. We will later on we will also study another theory of language learning, which is sociocultural theory, and this type of this aspect will also be discussed in that. They use in that sociocultural theory, this concept is used in a slightly different way. This is zone of proximal development, that is also the same current level and moving from current level to the next level with the help of some assistance. So similar concept we will discuss in sociocultural theory, but at the moment we just discuss what is comprehensible input. So comprehensible input mean the language which is slightly difficult from our current level of understanding. I plus 1. This is what Krashen says, that if we are exposed to language which is slightly difficult from our current level, then we will learn, and when we learn the next step, then that will be our learning stage, and then plus 1. So after following this procedure, I plus 1, then I plus 1, then I plus 1, so a learner is able to learn the language. So this is it leads to gradual learning or gradual development of a language, which is known as comprehensible input. Again, there is some criticism or you can say some questions about this, that how can we identify what is comprehensible for us in case of second language learner. So the very concept that this is comprehensible, if I ask you what is your current level of understanding and what is slightly difficult, so for a second language learner, it is really difficult to identify that what is my current level of understanding and what is the next stage for me. But to a certain extent, this is true also. To a certain extent, we can identify that this thing is very much difficult for me and this thing is slightly difficult, so I can learn it. But to identify it in very concrete form, in exact form, that what is a learner's current level, it is really hard to define. So this was sort of the questions raised, or this was some criticism on Krashen's monitor model, that how can a learner identify that what is my current level and what is the next level. But in a broader sense, this makes sense that yes, when we are exposed to the structures or language which is slightly difficult, then we learn the language. And I think if you just recall your childhood, so your gradual development of the English language, if you just think about it, you might agree with this, because when we are taught English language in schools, so you know that initially when we are at grade 1, we are exposed to slightly difficult sentences. Just like at grade 1, we are simply told about some of the words, just like cat, ball, or some other vocabulary items. Then we are at the next stage, we are told some sort of slightly difficult sentences, just like I am a boy, you are a girl, or this is a flower, this is my book, so something like these. And then gradually we are exposed to difficult expressions or structures. So we, even when we learn a language consciously or subconsciously, so definitely we move from easier to the slightly difficult level, that is I plus 1. So this is an important aspect of Krashen's monitor model, that the language learning process is based upon comprehensible input, that is I plus 1, and this plays an important role in language learning. Is this okay?